No scandal has better illustrated the gap between the rhetoric offered by the Bush administration about its post-9/11 fight against terrorism versus the reality of what it has actually done than the death of NFL star turned Army Ranger Pat Tillman. Our fifth story on the countdown. Breaking news this hour that just 7 days after Corporal Tillman's death, a top Pentagon official told the head of Central Command that President Bush should be warned to avoid saying that the Army Ranger had died in an ambush because there were strong indications he had in fact been killed by friendly fire, something his family would not learn for another month. Did the president know and not let the Tillmans know? The revelation from the Associated Press all but confirming the military has been more concerned with sparing its own officials from embarrassment than in sharing the truth about Corporal Tillman's death with his own family. In a memo dated April 29, 2004, then Major General Stanley McChrystal warning CENTCOM Chief General John Abizaid that it was, quote, highly possible the Army Ranger was killed by friendly fire and that this warning should be shared with the president. Quoting him, "I felt that it was essential that you received this information as soon as we detected it in order to preclude any unknowing statements by our country's leaders which might cause public embarrassment if the circumstances of Corporal Tillman's death became public." At the White House Correspondents' Dinner of 2004, just 2 days after that memo was dated, President Bush making no mention of how Corporal Tillman died, speaking only generally of his loss. Earlier this week on the Dan Patrick Show on ESPN Radio, Corporal Tillman's mother, Mary, talked to Dan and me about why she thought the military felt it necessary to withhold the truth about her son's death.
I mean, it's very important to keep in mind that this was not simply to dupe our family and to assuage our family. This was an attempt to dupe the public and to promote this war and to get recruitments up. And that is immoral, and it's a travesty that this young man, who did not, by the way, believe in the war in Iraq, was the right thing to do. I mean, that was just a horrible thing to do to his legacy.
Let's bring in Todd Bowers, Legislative Director for Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Thank you for your time tonight, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me.
The White House says the president often praises fallen soldiers without getting into any details of their death, but this obviously was not just an ordinary soldier. How suspicious should we be of the fact that the president's comments were utterly consistent with both the public story at the time as well as what we would all later on learn were the real facts of Tillman's death, but his family didn't even know at that time?
I think we should be very questionable about what the timing is of all of this. I mean, given 2 days afterwards that he finds this out and then speaks about Pat Tillman in these regards is just a little too close, if you ask me. The generals in the Pentagon were probably pretty aware. I mean, we know this by the emails, and whether that was forwarded on to the White House and the president knew about it is very questionable to me.
How likely is it that the head of Central Command, General Abizaid, would get a warning like this about saving the president public embarrassment and not pass it on either to the White House or to the Secretary of Defense at the time, Mr. Rumsfeld?
Well, I personally think it's very unlikely. If he knew they had a high-profile soldier such as Pat Tillman and died under these circumstances, I would hope that he would inquire as to what happened. Receiving an email such as this, I don't see why he would not send it to the White House. His loyalties are with the White House. They are essentially his employer.
The DOD Inspector General cited 9 people for failing to act properly once they knew friendly fire was suspected, especially in regard to letting the family know. 4 generals were among those 9. General Abizaid was not one of those 9. Do we have any idea why not, and should he have been?
I'm not sure why he was not included, but I do know this. When situations like this occur, they write sit reps, and anyone that saw this sit rep, the report of what happened to Pat Tillman that day, and allowed this month time frame to pass, should be held accountable in any way, shape, or form. Anyone that knew the truth and did not give that to the American public, most specifically to Pat Tillman's family, should be held accountable.
How bad, from the point of view of those who have survived Iraq and Afghanistan, is a story like this? How harrowing, how shaking to the core is something like this?
We all go over there and we serve with great pride and distinction. Whether we're killed in friendly fire, combat, or an accidental death, we all serve proudly. That should not become a piece in a political chess game. And I can tell you this much, and she's watching right now, so I'm sure she'd agree with me. If my mother had been treated the way Ms. Tillman was treated, there would only be 5 walls on the Pentagon right now, because she would have knocked down one of those to get the answers.
As well, we can all say that, I think, in our own families and perhaps on behalf of others like the Tillman family as well. Todd Bowers, the Legislative Director for Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Todd, great thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.